All right, everyone. I think we can call to order the January 19th meeting of the Boise Parks and Recreation Commission. I think we'll do attendance. Here.
Here. Baber. Johnson.
Here.
Mazu.
Here.
Raber. Raziska.
She called you.
Raziska.
Here.
Stidham.
Okay, so moving to new business, we have the minutes of the November 17th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the November 17th meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, and we'll vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. And the second item is an AARP livability presentation. I think is Denise going to introduce the speaker, and then this is informational only for the members of the commission.
Okay, hi. My name is Denise. I oversee the Stickerdly Senior Center for the city of Boise. And thank you for being here. Don Kostelek and the Idaho AARP have been supporting the Boise seniors. And just for some context, in end of 2016, the Recreation Department took over management of the senior center. And after which AARP invited the city to consider joining the network of age-friendly livable communities. And basically the network supports communities across the nation to design and implement policies and programs to ensure citizens can live safe, healthy, and socially connected lives wherever they choose to live. The premise is that places where we live are more livable and better able to support people of all ages, when local leaders commit to improving the quality of life for the very young, the very old, and everyone in between. We drafted a livability plan for 2019 to 2023, focusing on areas that the senior center has influence, which is getting our seniors engaged in activities, connecting with each other and with their community, and helping them find their voice throughout the community. As part of this, we wanted to survey our seniors and get their opinions about the livability. And AARP helped us to do that with some tools they already had built in for surveys and their network. While some of that data was directly relevant to the senior center, it was also feedback that other city departments would find helpful in the work that they do. So as we strive towards the mission to create a city for all, we thought these options should be shared across the city. So with the help of Don Kostelek and AARP, we've kind of synthesized this information to help with decision making. And so I'm going to invite Don up here to share the results of that survey.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Don.
Hey, thank you, Commissioners, Councilmember Halliburton, Don Kostelek. I'm a private consultant here in Boise with Vitruvian Planning, and we've been working for the last 2 or 3 years providing technical support to AARP Idaho. And a little background on it. How many of you knew before today that Boise was an age-friendly community under the AARP designation? Okay, all right. So you are, as Denise said, AARP started this program about a decade ago. And if you know AARP historically of, talking and certainly lobbying for things like Social Security and Medicare and stuff, they certainly do that. However, they've realized over the years that as they look at an aging population, a lot of community livability principles apply to seniors. And they also think about it from an age friendliness, not just to think older adults, but what we call an 8 to 80 concept, or on that 8 to 80 spectrum. If you can make community, its facilities conducive for freedom of mobility and inclusion for an 8-year-old to an 80-year-old, we can pretty much capture most of the population. So I'm going to ask you later after I go through this, but start teeing it up. I'm going to ask you to take off your Parks and Rec Commission hat for a second and think of yourselves as a citizen. And I want you to think of non-Parks and Rec things in Boise, whether it's a facility, a program, a recent plan the city has passed that embodies what age friendliness means. Because one of the things we're tasked to do is help hone in the city's focus for this and find some initiatives moving forward that may not even be related to Denise's work in the senior center, but could be things to better integrate older adults into the consideration of a variety of things. So I'll tee it up that way to be thinking about it. So why is AARP interested in this? I teased that a little bit. We're fast approaching a point that in another 10 years, the United States will have more adults over the age of 85 than children under the age of 18. And if you can just think about programs and services within a parks department, to emergency services, to disabled populations, and all of those things that's coming at us, you can kind of see why they would be interested in that for their primary membership base. But as I said, it's about people of all ages. This year, we've been doing technical support in Preston, Idaho, Malad, Idaho, Cascade, and Nampa. And you can imagine the issues there are very different. We were just talking before the meeting. Cascade doesn't even have a pharmacy. So we're talking about a very fundamental life and health situation that they're dealing with, which you can understand. So you can see how Boise's interest and priorities could be different in this. And when they're looking at things like in this livable community graphic, you can see a lot of the stuff that probably relates to what the city here is doing. And I think the challenge is finding what to focus on, given so many things are in pretty good shape for that. Within the livability realm itself, AARP has identified 8 different domains of livability. And if you go to AARP's website and type in the livability index, you can type in Boise, Idaho, and you will get a livability score of 55. The national average is a 50. So from that perspective, when AARP takes national metrics that they can compile for every city in the country and look at it through the lens of these domains, you're performing pretty well as a city. But that doesn't mean we don't have challenges and other needs to address. The other thing AARP asks on the age friendly is they don't expect you to address all of this as a city engaged in this process. They want you to find your own priorities and work toward them. That's the most important thing. But what that does is it allows you more grant opportunities through them, as well as technical assistance. If you've seen some of the recent stories about housing affordability in Meridian specifically, we worked with them in 2021 to define their priorities. Housing was one of 3, and they used that for AARP to bring in different subject matter experts to help do that analysis. So that's one idea that they came up with as we work toward that. So as Denise mentioned, you guys had the city under Mayor Beater did the original letter of commitment in 2018. Mayor McLean re-upped that soon after taking over. And this was also on the heels of the age-friendly livability plan that the city put together. That happened in 2019, and we all had a fun event that happened in early 2020 that essentially, I think they would say, kind of stalled that, and especially at the senior center itself, not even been able to get together in person and other things. So some of that's been sitting there, but for very good reasons for that. And we began a discussion last year with the city under a separate effort at the senior center to really just maybe hone in on what some of their ideas were. And one of them was from the standpoint of engaging seniors specifically in public involvement across many of the initiatives that the city was doing. And I think where the Parks and Rec Department acted on that promptly was in the public engagement on the pools at the 2 facilities, and trying to look at that of like, okay, we certainly have children and neighborhoods and other things. How does that process affect our older adults in our community? So Boise by the numbers, this is going on some of the more recent census data. We're in that 240,000 population range, and 1 out of every 7 is over the age of 65. some examples down, and obviously these are smaller communities, but Preston or Cascade is 1 in 3. So certainly when we talk about that and a pharmacy issue, you can see the issues there. So I would say based on some of those AARP numbers, Boise as a city is at least trending a little bit lower in those percentages, as you can see by comparison. Currently 1 in 4 are age 19 and younger. But here was an interesting one that we found, and we're finding it different across communities. If we look at the increase in household income over a 10-year period for all the residents of the city compared to residents over age 65, as a percentage of household income increase, it did increase higher for seniors, a 27% increase versus a 26% for all households. So probably within the margin of error on that. But as we know, older adults and fixed incomes, that overall magnitude can be a little bit lower. And certainly as we deal with affordability issues and things, you can see how those issues would be a little more compounded. What we've seen in some other cities, however, is in some of them on the order of like a 34% increase in household income for the overall population, but maybe only a 10% for older adults. So I would even say within the city of Boise, when we look at this metric, you're probably performing a little bit better than others. In the city overall, 1 in 9 in the population have a disability. However, 1 in 6 of those with a disability are over the age of 65, which is logical and understandable as people age, but a higher proportion of your disabled population is sitting in that older age bracket there. Another thing, and this is building upon work we did in the city 3 years ago, our firm did a community development analysis looking at health and housing specifically. And we looked at 50 different metrics among Boise's 48 or 49 census tracts. And these things ranged from kind of the things you're probably familiar with of socioeconomic status, age, race, and some other things. But we also looked at access to bus stops and even tree canopy and tree coverage. And when we modeled these and we overlaid those 50 data sets, we attempted, and we also had health data. For example, we can get cardiovascular disease numbers at the census tract level. We can get mental health numbers at the census tract level. We plugged all that in and we tried to identify which geographic sectors of the city were the most challenged from a health and social well-being perspective. And so the darker color of purple, those in tier 1, are those areas of the community that we modeled in those metrics as having more challenges from that perspective. And the reason we bring that up in the context of the senior center is because of where it's physically located. It's not within some of those areas, but I know the civic center or the senior center is interested in kind of deploying programs to the branch libraries and other things to get out in the neighborhoods. The city's tree planting initiative that kicked off a couple years ago as a result of our study decided to focus some of those initial efforts in those census tracts 19 and 20 that are kind of in this toxic soup of air with the Y interchange and the air pollution that's coming off there. And we know trees do well to do those things. So that's how some of this stuff ties together in overall livability initiatives. And then there's always some oddities in here. Some of the census tracts that are split with Meridian are really small Boise population and other things. The 2412 up top is so few residences, but it's where your sewage treatment plants are. So like we said, take some of that with a grain of salt, but in overlay that you can see the results and you can probably relate to certain populations in these census tracts that might have some of those conditions. Boise's original livability plan looked at and defined these priority domains: transportation, increase independence for older adults and persons with disabilities by improving services. And I think that led, and Denise, correct me, with some contract and work with Valley Regional Transit on getting senior center access and other things. Is that, if I remember that story correct? Social participation, a huge one. Social isolation is a huge detriment to older adults, and things like the senior center offer that with a goal of increasing the number of participants. But as you can see, 2019 to 2023, we had the COVID warp in there. And then social inclusion, kind of getting at the equity issues, expand awareness and involvement of programming activities and events to broader audiences of aging adults. And from what we've heard, and this is something we wanted to maybe affirm with you, is do these priorities still make sense? I think there's some sentiment that because COVID stalled these, there hasn't been a ton of opportunity to march down that road. So I think there's some agreement there. So as we said, kind of your input today and thinking of these domains, what ideas do you have for that? And maybe what would you like to see in terms of some priorities related to that? So I'm going to wait a second on that question because I'm going to get back to the question I promised you. And this is just to get you thinking about it. Outside of Parks and Rec, and you can just spit them back at me if you want to, or if your Robert's rules allow you to. What are some other things that the city has going on initiative-wise, facility-wise, now that you're all age-friendly experts from 10 minutes of presentation, that embody the idea of age-friendliness?
And I guess members of the commission, feel free to speak up or not as warranted. How so? A little, and somebody else can chime in on that. How does that relate to it?
Increased in the cost of housing here. I know I spent some time volunteering for Jesse Treese, and I
Okay.
had fielded a lot.
You know
of
those phone calls.
I know those phone
Yes.
calls, and a lot of them were coming from seniors who are on fixed incomes.
Yeah.
And so the initiatives the city has started with, looking at how we increase housing affordability, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And if you've heard the term aging in place, becoming something, even from the standpoint of a house that is accessible. If we think about the number of homes that have a 0-step entry, that if you have a walker or a wheelchair later in life, if you don't have that, it's automatically like an additional quote unquote tax to bring it up to speed. But yeah, the ADU ordinances, everything else going on with housing, we could chime in on that for a long time. When we did the 50 census tract and identified those tier areas, we then went down every street within those priority ones. And if you've not noticed the number of over 55 communities tucked away in the city of Boise in all kinds of places, it's pretty amazing. The one behind the Albertsons at Glenwood and State, very well kept mobile home park. And one of the best things about it, whatever vision in the 70s when that was built, there's a pedestrian bridge over the canal that gives those folks direct access into that development for groceries, for the Rite Aid, for Goodwill, and other things. It's a very small piece, but it all fits into that. So excellent. Others not related to housing.
I would just chime in on just overall accessibility. This commission is very, very concerned and very interested in how we provide access to everyone.
Yeah.
But we really are looking at those demographics, which include our aging population, on how they have access to not just a park or other city assets, but just city services in general. And so I think just that, creating a city for everyone, which is the vision of Mayor McLean, is that the main component to that. And Councilmember Halliburton could certainly
Sure.
chime in on this at any moment, but access for everyone, regardless, is really a top priority in the city.
Good. Others. Yeah.
I was thinking about mobile markets and the food deserts, just if people are limited in terms of transportation, being able to access food. And I know that we have some mobile markets that go around, at least in the summer, to provide access to fresh groceries.
Good. Somebody from that half of the table.
I don't consider myself an expert at all, but I thought of the library system and having a lot of distributed programming these days, virtual and pickup services, and lots of wonderful avenues for participation through the distributed library system.
And I think for both what you said and Doug, there's a social inclusion aspect of that, because if you feel isolated in your home because of a basic lack of access issue, that not only from just a physically being able to get somewhere, but then not being able to engage in that. And then, yes, certainly the library and especially the branch library and the technology has been a good one. Any others?
We've already alluded to the climate, the trees. So the climate initiative itself that the city is doing is helping with that.
Yeah.
We'll continue to. And it's not just the city, but overall, Boise has a wonderful array of volunteer opportunities, which I think is really important for building community when it comes to all ages.
Anybody off the top of their head know the value that a tree has in reducing your energy bill? It's pretty significant. I don't remember the number either, but in talking about fixed income and lowering those things, even something as basic as a tree can lower a summer heating bill, things like that. You guys just had a big plan that got a lot of attention on things that probably gets at that too. What would that have been?
Yeah, I like to listen as much as I can on here, so I'm not speaking up. We've got a few different things with our Pathways Master Plan that's huge.
And just hired a mobility director and pathways director too.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of the things that are on here, as far as people being able to be social with each other, people being able to walk or bike in places to do that safely, some of the pathways that we've identified all over town, and some of them actually have a prioritization that includes an equity issue. And we'll be talking about that actually in our next agenda item. The ability for these pathways to allow people to be able to recreate or get to places like a library or a school or a grocery store, or things nearby is huge. But the first one that I thought of was before I was on council, and it was the redesign of the in front of City Hall. So the entryway to City Hall used to be like you had only at one side that was accessed with a sloped pathway. Now, no matter what entry you come into, there's a way to get into City Hall that's much easier for people of all abilities, whether you're using a walker, a wheelchair, whatever it may be. And then the other thing that I thought of, and this is why I don't talk, I thought of the crosswalk that gets over here that isn't very friendly, because it only gives you about 10 seconds to get across the road to get to our nice sloped path up to be able to access City Hall, which I wasn't able to do a couple of weeks ago when I was using a walker. So,
or just think about, you build a new pathway, you eventually have to cross a street, how that signal is timed based on the walking speed of an average adult or an older adult, and which neighborhoods might have higher percentages. Those are the kind of things to possibly consider in that regard. So good. I suggest you keep thinking of that. You'll think of more. So given that, what could be improved? What's missing? What's lacking? What within your role on Parks and Rec Commission, if you had the blank checkbook, what else would you do?
And again, members, feel free to chime in or not.
I guess one of the things, Mr. President, commission members, that we would want to spend a little more time looking at is that heat map and looking at where we can engage in some of those census track areas in how we're delivering our services. And particularly when it comes to, the transportation piece, because as you did point out, Don, that the senior center is located not in those areas. And so transportation does become pretty important to this group. But just as you have been able to actually really look at a lot of different layers of detail in each of those tracks, I think it'd be interesting to us to continue to look at those and how we can affect any opportunities that we could provide services in those areas for those that have, and not just transport. So if it's transportation, then is there somewhere in that area, Denise, that we could take our services to, whether it be a branch library or one of our school-based community centers, and make sure that we start looking at how can we affect change in increasing some of those services in those areas. So I think that's one thing we would look at as a department.
No, I think that's great. And Denise had mentioned to me before the meeting of just a grant through AARP, and what's the organization's name? Learn Idaho, basically doing technology and computer literacy for older adults, and certainly tying that into, casting that into neighborhoods and things to do it. We had heard of a program down in Oneida County in Malad where the library had gotten a grant for 20 Chromebooks and was specifically doing technology literacy classes for older adults, and just, hey, you're being asked to do telemedicine more and more, and even just operating Zoom and other things can definitely be a little bit of a challenge. Luckily, we're in other areas, we're dealing with broadband access and other things that for an urban area is pretty good. But I think we also found in some of the lower income housing developments and things, the surveys show that the broadband and internet quality is not that great. So there's another way to look at those things. So yeah, great point, Doug. Any other thoughts?
I was thinking we keep talking about having access to parks within, a 10-minute walk. Yeah. And, that would provide more opportunities in terms of social interaction and inclusion. And just getting outside, right? If they have a destination that's within walking distance.
Any others? Any other ideas or thoughts or things coming to your mind?
We've heard lots at the commission about if you want people to come together and be social, they have to play pickleball. So
Commissioner Ruziska, what are you doing?
can you believe I'm taking the lowest hanging fruit on the?
It's your school district that needs
It's like-
to chip in here and get some courts built, dude.
So I'm going to give you an out of left field idea. Does anybody know of a famous sporting event in Spokane that they use the streets for every summer?
The big run, the
Hoop Fest.
Hoop
They
Fest.
set up basketball courts on a bunch of the city streets. Could Boise have National Pickleball Fest where we close down a bunch of streets and set up pickleball courts and do something like
See, now that's when he says that, no, I am in trouble. Like Doug's gonna be like, meet me after the meeting. But
Mr. President, commission members, our mayor's deputy chief of staff is in the audience. We'll just throw that at her.
Yeah. But I do think, to the point, in all, kidding aside here, we're actually working on some ideas because I work with the Boise School District. And so we're kind of entertaining ideas, we are thinking junior highs, which aren't always going to be the best 10-minute location for people. But, we have tennis courts and really sometimes those tennis courts aren't being used, and how we can work together with Boise School District and Parks and Rec about putting pickleball courts on those tennis courts and letting people, so like choosing 4 junior highs that are kind of, in each quadrant of our city and having people access that. And so, those are things we can continue to do. Really, the location of the senior center being right next to the community center allows the ability for our seniors to be active, right? And to help them with some of that programming. But we can do more. We can work together and partnership together to try to do more and listen to what those needs could be and see if we can.
And I
work
think you bring up
together.
a great point too, that we emphasize in this. These types of things are not a city does it alone. It is a partnership thing, whether it's to school districts, whether it's to Jesse Tree and the field is large on that, and the effort should come from the different partners. So that's great. But I can tell you, just the pickleball thing comes up everywhere and every time. And if you've not been out to the pickleball courts just on the other side of the West Y to see what's happening there on a Saturday, you want to talk about social inclusion. So great. Any others? Any other thoughts come to mind?
I mean, my only overall thought is I don't really see any tension between, and I liked how you phrased 8 to 80, right? I don't see any tension between sort of the day-to-day business of what the department's doing and what we're doing and sort of your goals here. I mean, the sort of, in my view, higher priority but lower profile items are keeping the costs low. I mean, if you look, the department does a phenomenal job of keeping costs low on the recreation side, but also sort of providing nice outdoor spaces where people can recreate and do what they want to do at no cost. And so from my perspective, I I don't see any real tension. I think the department's doing a really nice job keeping things affordable and having nice facilities available for everyone at really low cost.
Good. And I'll add one more thing we are kind of looking into with this effort, and this just stemmed from the conversations we've had with Roseanne and Denise, and that is if we go out and we're refurbishing a park, do we put equipment in there that we did in 1960? We're not doing metal slides and all those kind of things that I know some of us had growing up. If we go out and do all the stuff we did at the library, we're putting new things in them. What does a modern senior center look like? What are the facilities and things with the changing population and changing desires that might give some ideas for either maybe just programming or facilities? And through the AARP network, we're reaching out to an architect that's been doing some of that just to maybe get some ideas as a part of it. Certainly not something to commit to, but maybe even something to survey the existing clientele at the senior center, as well as those in an older age bracket that might not use it, of what would help bring them into the fold. So we'll have some of that. Our timeline is to have at least a summary report done around the March timeframe, and I'm certainly happy to come back and present those results and things to you. And there might be a couple other ideas in there. For example, if say you had an action item coming before you, would you add a paragraph to a staff report of how this embodies age friendliness? Or would you use that lens to maybe design things and inform the design on those a little different? Those are all very valid things you could choose to do, and ideas we've had coming up in other communities. If after this meeting any other ideas come up, certainly relay them through Doug. I know it's a lot of information in a short period of time, but we look forward to developing that. And like I said, we can come back and present to you if that's the commission's desire. So with that, I'll wrap up or stand for any questions.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our third agenda item. This is a public hearing for the linear park and pathway at West Goddard Lane Master Plan. The commission after the hearing will be voting on approving the master plan. And I think, Sarah, are you going to present? We'll do a staff presentation and then hold the hearing and then hold the vote.
Thank you, President Carter. Hello, commission members. It's nice to be here this afternoon. I'm actually going to be co-presenting, and Jason, if you'd like to sit down here so you can whisper into my ear if I say something incorrect, that would be helpful. Before I begin, I wanted to introduce Jason Miller. He's a licensed professional landscape architect that has been with us about 6 months. Is that right? 3 months. Wow, you really, yep. Very happy to have you. And Jason has picked up this project among many others to keep things marching forward. We're both very excited and pleased to share this with you. This is a milestone for a very important project. So I'll just get started. So this linear park site is about 3 acres. It runs parallel kind of along West Goddard Road, ending at Fircrest. It's directly across from Capitol High School. The original concept to turn this dirt patch, frankly, into a park was brought to the city by the West Bench Neighborhood Association through our neighborhood investment program. And the neighborhood really wanted to activate an area that had been, considered a dumping site, just really left behind. Unfortunately, the property was not owned by the city at the time. It was owned by settlers. And so we entered into negotiations with the canal company, I think in 2019, to see what might be possible. After, as we all heard, 2 years of sort of COVID focus, we were able to turn those negotiations into an acquisition rather than an easement. And so in July of 22, the Parks Department was able to acquire through donation that 3 acres. Just a funny sidebar, because it was canal property, it was not issued a parcel number. So we had to go through a little bit of a lengthy process to identify parcels that we would then acquire. So that took a little bit of time. But this project, and this park site, because it was so valuable to the community, we've done, I think, a pretty good job of working with the community to try and identify the future use of the site. As I mentioned, this all started in 2019. There was a public meeting held at that time to get input, and then a subsequent survey was sent out. The high school, the school district, College of Idaho, the neighborhood association, many partners came forward to support this effort. And those concepts and the visioning that was done through the initial public engagement has really helped to inform the master plan that you're going to see before you here in a few minutes. Before I'll let you look at some pretty pictures while I wrap up. A couple things I want to say about this site before I turn it over to Jason to walk you through the design elements and the hopes for this location. This is a key connection, not only for a safe route to schools, because it will be a pathway that connects. Let me go back here real quick. On the far right of this screen, which you can't see, but there's a very difficult intersection. I believe it's Glenwood. And there is not great pedestrian and bike connectivity in this area, which obviously is, directly adjacent to a school. So there will be a pathway element to this project, in addition to it being a linear park that will provide great connectivity between Hyatt Hidden Lakes on the north side of town, and then Spalding Ranch, which is a park property that we are actively trying to design and activate as a working farm. Okay, last thing I'll say is this property itself will serve about 685 households. These are households that may not have adequate access within a 10-minute walk. So we're really excited to be able to bring in, 1,900 additional individuals to that service level. So with that, I will hand it over to Jason, and he can kind of walk you through what this park will look like moving forward. And then, of course, we will be asking you to consider approval of this master plan so we can continue the process of park build out.
So as Sarah said, we're really excited about kind of taking the next step with this park and showing the community the next phase of all their input and kind of what we can create that really blends into the fabric of our existing park system and makes this a really interesting as well as functional park in our current system. As Sarah mentioned, it is a really large, long section. It kind of starts on West Fircrest Drive and connects all the way over to Neighbor Tim's Barbecue. And it's about a kind of a 4-block section, which is a pretty large and long section. It does run along the existing canal there, and is pretty much just a gravel base at this point, or parking lot. So at this point, anything would be an upgrade based on what we have. But we're excited to share this vision, and we think that it can really be improved significantly. As a part of this process, so U of I kind of developed a concept that kind of spurred things and got the community more involved and excited about this project. And really what we've tried to do is, since we purchased the property, is kind of take the actual site limitations and create something that is going to be really functional and maintainable for us long-term as an organization. So with that, we had kind of 3 overriding goals in this process. One is to, I'm going to skip to the master plan a little bit, but the first overriding goal is to kind of maintain the existing Settlers Canal in a kind of a safe, functional form, in which we're looking at creating these access points, which are essentially driveways that allow the canal company to maintain their facility, but then are kind of they don't stand out in the park and just kind of blend in with the fabric of the design. So when they need to access it, they can. There's 2 access points along the west side, and then there's 3 along Christine and between Christine and Neighbor Tim's Barbecue. There'll also be kind of a 4-foot high chain link fence that'll be along the new parcel line that we have there, which will be a really nice way of, just kind of defining the edge of the park so we can maintain it in that configuration. And it will have secured access points for the canal too, which makes the canal company excited. The second goal was kind of improve pedestrian safety, neighborhood connectivity, and accessibility for the public users. And so we did that by kind of creating a 10-foot wide concrete path that extends from one end of the park to the other. And then it transitions to a 5-foot attached walk along Fircrest. So it's this really nice kind of long walking corridor that's separated from the roadway and gives a feeling of safety along this path. So we're going to improve the neighborhood connectivity, working with VRT and improving the stop that they currently have there now, which I believe is largely just a bench. But essentially, this will have a shade structure, a drinking fountain, a bike repair kit for people who are commuting by bike. It will also have benches for comfortable seating, and it's adjacent a shade structure that's proposed in the center of the park. There'll be bollards at different entry points, a 4-foot crush path that is kind of a secondary accessible path from the main path. So it'll have a main circulation route and these secondary paths, which will have a series of gardens included in them. The third goal that was creating a visually interesting pedestrian, healthy pedestrian experience with locations for rest, shade, and enjoyment of park and planting spaces. And that includes a shade shelter. We've got a 15 by 15 shade shelter in the middle of the park, which will be used for hosting, teaching, small events, and gathering, and will really serve a multi-purpose use for the park. There'll also be seat walls in the gardens with berms, no mow fescue along the perimeter of the main garden to add visual interest. And then there's 3 gardens within the design. So we're looking at essentially a sensory garden, which would encourage visitors to kind of stop, slow down, and take notice, and invite them to touch, smell, or notice something special about the different plants in the garden. So it'll make the pathway way more interesting. And we'll include plants like, woolly sunflower, golden currant, and coyote mint. The second form of garden we have is pollinator garden, which is right in front of the shelter and kind of on the west side. And that'll attract a lot of bees and pollinator species, provide habitat for those, which is kind of a key landing spot in the community to improve upon. And then the third option is going to be a kind of a native plant garden as a part of this as well. So we can really demonstrate our commitment and value to our native plant and ecology. So that's kind of the general overview of the design. Lots of shade trees, benches along the way. We're going to be primarily using a permabark mulch along the perimeter outside of the main focus area. And that's done to limit the cost of infrastructure in terms of the irrigation system and the effort that's required. We're still going to be able to, put in nice shade trees and make the experience nice. And then we're looking at adding an art element with the art wrap at the shelter. And then one of the key things that we're working on with ACHD is right now there's a section of the roadway on Goddard Road and on Fircrest that essentially doesn't have a curb. So the grade between the street and the park are on the same level, and just raising that up to a curb level so that we can have like a safe pedestrian environment and not risk the concern about someone veering off the roadway, which does happen from time to time. So that's kind of the gist of the design. These are the kind of program elements we had, like the sensory garden that I mentioned in the top left. We have lots of plants. They'll be xeric. They'll be very consistent with the Boise typology, but having the shade elements, the seating elements, and we're looking at the potential to add some like minor seat wall lighting and maybe a little bit of path lighting as well, based on what the community had given us input to do. And so we think all this together is going to create a really nice park for this part of town, and we're excited to present the next phase of this. So
Mr. President, Commission members, Jason, what will the main pathway through, what will it be composed of?
Yeah, so the main pathway will be concrete. It'll be a 10-foot multi-use path. And then the secondary, kind of in the garden area will be more of a crushed rock, it'll be a 4-foot accessible path. And then we'll have a few minor, so the 10-foot concrete will run continuous throughout the whole site. So you could get on your bike and comfortably ride it or walk it. But there will be some minor crossings in a couple places where the maintenance needs to be for the canal. So.
Thanks, Jason. And I heard you talk about, access for maintaining the canals. This is just mom self. Like, do you have, is there an effort to prevent kids from getting into the canal? That's always something I think about.
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to alleviate by using the chain link fence to kind of separate it. We're hoping that would be more of a black, so it won't be stand out as this kind of dominant chain link fence, but we'll still provide the physical barrier in between the park and the canal.
This is really exciting to see. In my previous life, I was actually the principal at Capitol High School for close to 15 years. And I could bore you guys to death for an hour on some of the inappropriate activity that happens in this section that you're talking about, from motocross riding to, Jeeps and trucks, thinking it's kind of 4-wheel drive when it's wet and muddy and all that, and just all of the parking too, like on big game nights and open house and some of those things. And it was really kind of like, what do we do with that over there? Like, who owns that? And how can we now get this organized so that there's not this crossing across the street in just every point along Goddard. And so, wow, this is just like, I'm not the principal there now, but if I were still, I'd just be like, this is going to be amazing. A curb and a sidewalk, and it's clean, it's organized, it's safe. And it's just all of those things that the input, that we got from the meetings. And so this is, just from a real biased, selfish kind of a look, this is going to be great. And then as it continues, like you're talking about, down through Christine and then down towards Fircrest as you go west, across the street from the church, all the same issues there at the church that I know they spoke about. So anyway, just, I think all of the topography and the sidewalks, the safety with the canal, all of that, this is just tremendous. I'm really thrilled. So this will be fun to go to the current principal and say, wow, think of what this could be, of just all the issues you just have to deal with. So.
All right. Any other comments?
If I died tomorrow, I'd be dying a happy man. That's really bad to say, but
Yeah, Mr. President.
this is such a great thing right here.
Yes, you can take credit for it, Rosiska. Why don't you just do that? I just want to thank you, Jason, with the work you did on the design, and Sarah and your team. I know there was a lot of community engagement that was done on this, and it dates back several years. And this started as a very small project. Like, I'm going to throw out a figure. Don't hold me to like $60,000 of something just really small across the street that would keep couches and discarded mattresses out of that area. And it just grew to this because there really was a lot of work that needed to be done. And I really got to give a shout out to Sarah, because she worked her magic with Settlers in getting them to donate the property. You'd mentioned we didn't purchase anything here. This was a gift to the city, and irrigation companies generally don't do that, and generally don't like to see linear parks running along their canal banks. And this is important to the city because we want to see more connections like this throughout the city, and more that are along canal banks. At the end of the day, they are key corridors for us from a transportation perspective. And so this is really an important project. It's way beyond the 60,000 right now, but it's well worth what we're getting out of this project. And so nice work, Jason, on the design and the engagement, and Sarah, nice work in getting this to the finish line here finally.
And Sarah, if I can just add, even right now, like somebody has gone through right now, and you guys have kind of graded that area. And so you already start to get the vision of really how this could be, and really how great it could look and function. And so, I mean, it already is 100 times better. And so, anyway, I just wanted to slide that in with what Doug said. It's really, you can already kind of see how that's going to be.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if any of the neighbors are here that helped apply for it originally. Yeah, wonderful job. Such a cool thing to see how a neighborhood can have a forever impact on that area, and one that will serve so many people, and just a really cool opportunity that so well, because you live there and you've seen that potential. I think probably for years before, we've actually seen anything like this. There's also a bunch of goat heads in that parking lot. And I know that because somebody pulled 1,000 pounds of goat heads out of that parking lot one year for this festival that we put on. But I just want to say, great job neighborhood, great job staff, all the folks who were involved in getting comments for this one. It really is pretty incredible. And like Doug said, this is kind of a proof of concept as well. And if we can show that this works and we can learn from it and find ways to work with some of the irrigation districts, it can open up some doors for some really unique opportunities, I think, in other areas. So good job, everyone around.
If I could just add, and I'm just repeating something because I'm always so impressed by it, is in my job as a lawyer, I've been involved in litigation between cities and irrigation districts. I am astounded that you were able to work this with settlers. It really is incredible, and that the neighborhood participated, because for a lot of good reasons, and some that I think are just conceptual, irrigation districts are so resistant to these types of concepts. And what Councilman Halliburton just said is true. The value of this is immediate and impressive, but if it also can be a domino, hats off to everybody who's been involved. I would have never thought you could get this done. And the fact that you have, and in this manner, is truly impressive.
Agreed. All right. So I think it's time for the public hearing. Just real quick, we've got 2 people signed up. When you approach the podium, state your name and address. We'll keep it to 3 minutes for an individual and 10 for a group. And I think it should be pretty streamlined. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. And I have Ron Marley.
Thank you. Mr. President, Council. My name is Ron Marler. I live at 8781 West Corey Lane in Boise in the West Bench. And as a previous president of the West Bench Neighborhood Association, we would like to give our full support to this project as it has been laid out for you in this proposed master plan. Like you said, we've been working on this for a long time. It was kind of an exciting time for us to get together as a neighborhood. It was really a bonding issue, binding for the way that we do things in our neighborhood association, working with Energize back in as early as 2018, coming up with charrettes, reaching out to the neighbors, having events, giving out ice cream and showing poster boards and getting people's feedback on Post-it notes. And we did this for the entire summer of 2019. We really felt like we met a good portion, and we kept track of who we were meeting, and we made sure that the entire neighborhood had an association that they could come to and come together on what it means to have a good neighborhood. What was a good neighborhood to them? And from that, we came back with a few different ideas, and one of them was this one. And we never had any doubt that with good people behind it, that we could move this to this particular type of design. we always had faith in this system, although it seemed to move slowly, and probably a lot of that because of COVID, and a lot of that because we understand also that the working with the canal companies wasn't going to be easy. This project also lends itself to a lot of other things that we're interested in as the neighborhood association, such as the city's Pathways program. A lot of us have been involved in the Pathways program as far as putting our ideas on the maps and stuff. And this particular linear park lies right in the middle of a major dream for the West Bench Neighborhood Association and the West Bench itself. We got Hyatt Wetlands, which is a great addition. It's a great place to go for a walk. If you haven't been down there, we spend lots of time down there. We love it. Thank you for that. And I know that there were some irrigation issues with that intersection as well. But we would like to see it even go further east as far as the pathways goes. We've got a dotted line that goes down that canal bank clear down to Orchard Street in Garden City, but now that's Garden City. But, you know, we all share the same pathways. So I don't know what can be done there, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. That's our big design, is to have that actually connect Hyatt Wetlands and then down towards the Greenbelt, down the east side.
Hey, Ron, just real quick. So
Sure.
we've got 3 minutes. Are you speaking on behalf
I'm
of the
speaking on
neighborhood?
behalf of the neighborhood association.
Well, let's keep going for the 10.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Like I said, we are dedicated to this project. We're very excited. I brought with me a little thing from 2019, where the city awarded us an award for visioning to reality. I think they jumped the gun a little bit. We're still waiting on the reality, but we're excited. We're excited, and we are entirely behind this project the way it's been laid out. And I don't think I have anything else to add on. Hopefully we can get the ball rolling on this. I don't know what the funding looks like. We would like some updates as far as that goes. Yeah. If anyone has any questions for me, I'm open.
Great. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Mr. President, commission members, just real quick, since Ron had brought it up, we are planning on taking this project to the Open Space and Clean Water Committee for full funding. And we're taking that to them on February 1st. And we anticipate that they will approve the funding for it. We don't have a bid yet.
Director Holloway?
Yes.
We probably will not be able to take this until March because we
Okay.
don't have a big.
So it'll be the March meeting that we'll be taking it. But the key to it is we are asking for funding that already is in place to be allocated to this project.
Okay, the second person I have signed up is Jonathan Melby.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Melby. I live at 2924 North Maywood Avenue. This evening, I'm just speaking as a resident. I've lived in the area with my daughters for about 18 years. And this part of Boise, much of it was put into place in the 70s and 80s as kind of a patchwork of subdivisions. And projects like this are really helping knit together the area beyond what it is and has been as a patchwork of subdivisions. I'm fully supportive of this. My girls graduated from high school just a few years ago, but had this been there in place at the time, what we heard about that section, it really needs something. So thank you for supporting this project and its position between Spalding Ranch and the Hyatt Lakes piece. It's excellent. And I hope that this, as well as future work at Spalding Ranch, will help knit together our patchwork of subdivisions into a more well-connected community. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I did see a Kimber Green, I think, type into the chat online to note her support for the project, and we'll do that. Kimber, did you want to testify as well, or are you sort of that noting of your support sufficient?
President Carter, it looked like Kimber just wanted to relay her support, so she's
Okay.
not looking to speak at this time.
Great. And with that, we don't have anyone else signed up and no one else on the online platform. So I think we can close the public hearing. And so I guess any preliminary questions or discussions? I mean, just from my perspective, I would echo everything that was said at the outset. Seems like a great project. That's an understatement, and a potential model for addressing or perhaps enhancing when we all drive around going, boy, it'd be fun to walk down that, nice, cool looking waterway, but there's signs and whatnot up, and great work to everyone. So any other comments? And then the action item is to vote on whether to approve the master plan. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the master plan for the linear park and pathway at West Goddard Lane to the Boise City Council.
Great.
I would like to second that motion.
Okay. So we'll vote, signify by saying aye. Is this a roll call vote or just vote? Okay. Everyone in support, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
Second. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thanks.